Hey, Joe here from Home Studio Corner. Big question that I get a lot. Should I go to audio school? And I've got opinions on that and just want to share a little bit of my story with you. If that's a question you're wrestling with, or if you know someone who is, maybe you can share this video with them just for some perspective. So real quick, I'll tell you kind of my path to where I am right now and then share with you some of my thoughts on recording school. So I grew up in a small town in Mississippi, got into music, started writing songs, got into recording, really cheap software, horrible microphone, that kind of thing. And my goal, I wanted to be a musician. Wanted to be, I guess, I didn't know specifically, but like a rock star was kind of the idea. Touring musician, something like that. Found out I loved recording, really got into that, and then I discovered there are colleges out there that teach audio and recording. And for a minute, I wanted to go to like music school, but then I realized that was all like musical theater and classical music, and that's not what I wanted to do. And I found that there are recording programs that focus specifically on the recording and production process. Schools that have studios in them where you can go learn how to record. So I was hooked from day one, and I ended up at a school called Middle Tennessee State University here near Nashville. So I was in Mississippi, trucked up to Nashville to go to school, well, specifically Murfreesboro. And went through, there was a 4-year degree program, so it was a bachelor's degree. And the last 2 years were really heavily in the studio, learning really like, I knew nothing going in. So learning really basic stuff and then learning more advanced stuff, like how to use these big honking consoles, how to route things around a studio, all the stuff about how to use Pro Tools, how to set up mics, how to set up a tracking session, all that kind of stuff. And there was lots of great equipment in these studios. My takeaway from that is I learned I could walk into a studio and feel confident that I could run a session somewhat well. I knew the technical side of things, very little of the creative side. So I knew a couple different ways to set up microphones. Didn't really know much about how to produce music. Like, what do I have the musicians play? And certainly didn't know much about mixing. At the time when I was at that school, they just didn't focus much on mixing for some reason. So a lot of that stuff I was completely in the dark on and had to learn a lot of it by myself. On my own. Following that, I was about to get married, graduate from school, and I decided I wanted a job. So I applied at Sweetwater, and got a job there in sales. So we moved up to Fort Wayne, Indiana, and for 3 years, that's what I did. I was on the phone, got to learn a lot more about equipment specifically, lots of different equipment in the industry, and really got to, it was a sales job. I wasn't making music all the time. I got to learn a lot more while I was there, and that was cool. Towards the end of my stint at Sweetwater, I got this urge to create. So I started working on writing songs, and actually forgot about this. I made a little songwriting podcast where I would post a new song every week. So I was writing songs, and then very quickly turned into, man, I want to write about audio, about recording, and write articles. So I created a blog called Home Studio Corner and started writing articles and made a YouTube channel to go along with it. And then at the time, this was 2008, 2009. There weren't a lot of people doing YouTube videos, specifically tutorial videos. There were some, but it was kind of a rare thing. So if you came across a tutorial video, you latched on because you just didn't see that very often. So I started doing that, and that when we left Sweetwater, I'd been doing Home Studio Corner for a few months. We moved back down to Nashville. I worked at a small studio for about 2 months, and that didn't work out. And then got a job with a manufacturer rep firm that repped companies like PreSonus, QSC, Waves, Sennheiser, companies like that. And all the while, I'm growing this Home Studio Corner thing. Not sure what it's going to be, but I just keep working on it. I keep making music. I keep doing the Home Studio Corner thing. And eventually, Home Studio Corner became my business. And a couple years later, in about, I think it was July 2011, I was able to quit the other job. We had a baby at the time, and was able to do Home Studio Corner full-time, along with client stuff and making my own music. So that's kind of been my journey. Now, absolutely, I can't sit here and say, no, you shouldn't go to audio school, it's not worth it. Because I went to audio school, and that was a stepping stone to lots of different opportunities, specifically expanding my knowledge, which at the time I couldn't have done as easily as you can now with YouTube and everything else. Opportunity to work at Sweetwater, which I probably wouldn't have gotten as just a guy off the street, because I just wouldn't have known enough to be able to work there and actually sell stuff. And then that led to me kind of getting into gear and audio and wanting to make a blog called Home Studio Corner. So my path has been really fun. I'm very grateful. But it is I mean, I've been running Home Studio Corner for 10 years. The world is very different. There's a lot more audio programs out there that don't require a 4-year degree. There's a lot of 2-year programs. There's some that are just like 6 and 9 months. And the question is, should I go to those? So here's how I think about that. First of all, as best you can, and I understand if you can't do this because you're just not sure what you want to do, you just know you love music and you want to work in it. If you can reverse engineer what you want, so start with what you want to accomplish. How do you see yourself? If 10 years from now you would say, that's what I want to be doing, what does that look like? For a lot of people, they'll say, I want to be mixing every day in my studio. Okay, fine. Do you see yourself mixing as an independent contractor, as a entrepreneur, or do you see yourself getting a job at a studio mixing? Because my first big point is, if your plan is to treat an audio program at a school like you would going to school to become a medical doctor, where you go to school a bunch and then you get a job at a clinic or at a hospital, I would say ditch that idea right now. There are certainly opportunities to get jobs in audio, but that's really changing and has been changing for the last decade or 2 or 3. If that's your plan, it's not a good plan. What I would suggest instead, so let me just be really clear what I'm saying. I'm saying you can go read Jeff Emmerich's book about how he graduated high school and instantly got a job at a studio and ended up, just by happenstance, being the engineer for the Beatles. That's a great story. It's not going to happen to you. You're not going to go out and graduate from school and get a job at Blackbird as a sound engineer. It's just not likely. I'm not saying that to be a Debbie Downer. I'm saying it because I think there's more opportunity to work for yourself than there is to work for someone else. What I mean by that is, you've got to, as much as you need to learn about audio, and there's lots of ways to learn that, you've also got to learn about business and how to be an entrepreneur, how to create value that the marketplace wants. You have something to offer, they will give you money in exchange for that. Or if you're in my world, maybe I partner with a company like PreSonus, and we both get value. Neither of us pays each other any money, but we're getting value in different ways. And there's also a third party, which would be you, that also gets value. So for example, hey PreSonus, I want to make a 100 video series on Studio One for you. I don't want to sell it as a course. I want to make it available to the public because I think the public needs it, but I want to partner with you so we all get value out of this. And they said, sure, what do you want to do? And so they gave me some gear, some of the stuff we have back here, and I made all these videos. They got a bunch of free videos made for their series, or for their software. The end user got a lot of great content. I got some equipment, everybody wins. That's the idea of value. Now you may be saying, well, that's great, Joe, but how do you put food on the table? Well, I've had to come up with other ways that actually make money, such as creating courses, doing client work, the tiny little bit I make from YouTube ad revenue. It requires you to think differently. Don't think like your parents' generation, which, no offense parents, but that was, you go to college, you get a job. That's great, and that can work, but there are so many other ways to make money. And in some ways, it's easier to make money on your own than it is to find a job that's going to pay you to do something you love to do. Now, there's a lot of argument around that. My own family doesn't necessarily agree. My little brother just finished grad school. I'm pushing him to do entrepreneurial stuff. My sister's pushing him to get a job. Neither answer is wrong. And it's a very real situation that you might need a job while you are trying to build up your business as a studio engineer or whatever you want to call yourself. I know plenty of people in Nashville, super talented. They have day jobs or part-time to full-time jobs in addition to touring, so they might be going on tour on the weekends, but then working 4 days at an office, doing nothing related to music. And that's a real part of the journey for a lot of people as well. So I'm just trying to paint a realistic picture, but also encourage you, if you want to step out, especially if you're young and you don't have a lot of responsibility, you don't have a lot of bills, you could live with 4 people in an apartment paying really low rent and just make it work. You would only have to make a couple $1,000s maybe to be fine for a nice long period while you build up your business, build up your chops, figure out what your value proposition is gonna be for the market, and then you can go from there. But back to the original question. I know I'm ranting, but this is important, and I know only a handful of people are going to watch this far, but it's worth it for me to make this really valuable for you. So going to audio school, are there benefits to doing it? Yes, there are. One benefit is you get You're going to learn a lot, most likely. You're going to get access to equipment that you wouldn't get access to otherwise. Big Neve consoles, big SSL consoles. That's really cool. Also not terribly practical because there's not a lot of places you're going to work that are going to have those. If we're talking about going, what I'm suggesting, the entrepreneurial route, where you are working on clients in your home studio versus working on big label projects at big studios. Those are certainly two options, and you can certainly pursue both, but one's more likely. If I had to choose between someone who had gone to audio school and worked on an SSL board but hadn't really produced many projects, and someone who had produced tons of projects in a home studio, and assuming they sound good, I'd go with this one. Even though this one has the pedigree, this one has the experience and has proven that he or she is driven and is willing to go out there and make things happen and get to work. Okay, so that's where I'm coming from. As a business owner, if I'm going to hire someone, I'm going to hire the person who does good work, not the person who has the degree. But the degree could be a step to get there. Now, here's where my extreme bias is going to come in. I've been creating courses for the last 20 years, the last 10 years. I've got over 20 courses that teach you things like how to record, how to mix, how to produce, those types of things. So I'm certainly biased. I think you can learn a lot from my courses because they're geared specifically to working in a home studio, not working in a big studio, which is where the vast majority of folks watching this video are going to find themselves. So I would argue if you were to spend some money on some of my courses, you would get a ton of value out of that arguably would be more valuable than what you would learn in a big college program. That's completely biased. And as someone who went to college, I get there's an attractiveness to that. The other big thing is cost. There are some audio schools I've looked up, and this has been years since I've looked at the actual prices, but upwards of 70, 80 grand to go through a 2-year program. If you've got 70 or 80 grand lying around or someone gave you the money and you want to do it, I say go for it. Great, super, awesome. But my wife and I, we're not big fans of debt, so I don't want to go have a huge student loan debt when I'm trying to come out of school into an industry that doesn't really give out jobs super easily, where I'm going to have to kind of grind my way and figure out a way to make a living and create value on my own. I would much rather, if you're going to, much rather you spend just a few $100s on some of my courses and then a few $1,000s on a good set of equipment and then just get to work. To me, that would be more valuable, doing that for the next 4 years versus being in an audio program for the next 4 years. I think if you were to look at the 4 years from now version of you, the one who had been making music in his home studio, his or her home studio for the next 4 years, versus the one who had just been in college learning all the proper ways to do it but hadn't made a ton of music, my guess is you're going to be farther along on your own than in a program. That said, a college environment is a great place to meet people and connect with people, and that's something that's valuable. It's hard to put a number on it. It's hard to know if it's worth it or not. But there are also ways to get to know people just by being a normal person and making the effort to be out there where the people are. You don't have to have college to make connections. But especially in a small industry like the music industry, it can be nice to be in a close proximity to other people who are in the same industry as you or have the same desires as you, because you'll probably cross paths with them in the future as you're doing work. And that's a good connection to have. So if it sounds like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth and giving you basically no answers, because it's complicated. There's no one single answer. I went to audio school and now I'm leaning towards, if my kids say I want to be an audio engineer, which I hope they do, but I doubt they will. I'm going to push my kids, whatever they want to do, towards the entrepreneurial side of things, because I've seen how great that can be. Terrifying, sure. Painful, absolutely. But worth it, yes. I'm going to push them in that direction because there's a lot to learn from being responsible for your own income in a very tangible, very specific way. That's kind of what I got a taste of at Sweetwater. I was a sales guy, 100% commission. I had to sell. I wasn't paid to have good conversations. I wasn't paid to know a lot. I was paid to sell. Now, selling involved having some good conversations and knowing a lot, but selling was the ultimate end. If I couldn't sell, I couldn't pay my rent. And so I had to learn how to sell. Selling is not a dirty word. So many people don't want to ever sell anything. You love to buy things. You pull up the Amazon app on your phone and your heart races just a little bit. You get a little hit of dopamine because we love to buy things. That means if you are selling something, there are people out there who would love to buy what you're selling. When I've worked with people like musicians where I've had to pay them to play on my project, or hiring graphic designers to work on my website or to work on an album cover. I love giving that money out because I'm getting something valuable in return. So think of it that way. You're exchanging value. At any given moment, what you have to offer is worth more to that person than whatever money they're holding in their hand. And they are happy to exchange that with you because it is a value exchange. You're both getting more than what you're putting in. If they're paying you $1,000, they feel like they're getting more than $1,000 in value. And if you're giving them your service and they're paying you $1,000, you're probably like, yeah, I'm giving you probably $500 worth of effort, but I'm getting paid $1,000, and that's great too. Now, I'm not saying rip people off or anything like that. I'm just saying it's a value exchange, and it's completely normal. It's the way we were wired to work, and sales is not a bad thing. So I've said a lot. I've rambled. If you've stuck to the end of this video, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I do have a course, if you want to check it out. It's called Home Studio Business. It talks about these principles more in depth, kind of gets you in the mindset to start even thinking about starting your own business and some practical steps to take. Feel free to check it out. It could be one of the first courses you take. Honestly, as much as I want you to take my stuff about mixing and recording and all those courses, the one about business, I would say, is equally as important. So check it out at homestudiocorner.com/business. But more than that, I hope you got some value out of this video. Leave a comment. Let me know if there's something I left out or something else you'd like to know about. I'm really here to help. I really want to make this valuable for you. Even if you never pay me a dime in your life, I want this to be valuable for you. Seriously. Thanks for watching. See ya.